In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Before we get into tonight's fire, before we bring out one of the most extraordinary human beings I have ever had the privilege of sitting across from, I want to take a moment. Because at AMIBW, we don't just entertain, we remember, we honor, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and tonight we lift up one of those tallest giants this nation has ever produced. Tonight's Black History Reflection is dedicated to General Colin Luther Powell. Say that name, Colin Powell. Let it sit with you for a moment, because this is a man who walked into rooms where no one looked like him had ever walked before, and he didn't just survive those rooms, he ran them. Born on April 5th, 1937 in Harlem, New York, Colin Powell was raised in the South Bronx, the son of Jamaican immigrants, Luther and Maud Powell. His parents came to this country with nothing but hope and a work ethic that would shape one of the most decorated careers in American history. They could not have imagined what their son would become, but God knew. Colin Powell attended City College of New York, and it was there inside the Army Reserve Officers Training Corps that he found his calling. In 1958, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant. He was 21 years old. He had no connections, no generational wealth, no political clout. What he had was discipline, vision, and an unbreakable will that was more than enough. Over the next 35 years, General Powell would build one of the most extraordinary military careers this nation has ever witnessed. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. He rose through the ranks with a combination of brilliance, grit, and a servant's heart. And then came the kind of first that don't just open doors, they blow the walls down. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan appointed Colin Powell as the 15th National Security Advisor of the United States, making him the first African American ever to hold that position, let that land. Then in 1989, President George H.W. Bush nominated him as the 12th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in the Department of Defense. Again, the first African American in history to hold that office. At age 52, he was also the youngest chairman ever appointed. He served from 1989 to 1993, steering the nation through the Gulf War, Operation Desert Shield, and Operation Desert Storm with a steady hand and an iron resolve. And then in 2001, President George W. Bush appointed him as the 65th Secretary of State of the United States, the first African American in history to hold that position as well. 3 unprecedented firsts, 1 extraordinary life. What made Colin Powell remarkable wasn't just what he achieved, it was how he achieved it. He served across Republican and Democratic administrations alike. He was not defined by party. He was defined by principle. His personal leadership code forged him in the jungles of Vietnam, and the halls of power in Washington emphasized preparation, integrity, optimism, and an unflinching commitment to those he led. He wrote about these principles in his landmark memoir, My American Journey, published in 1995, and later in his Guide to Leadership, It Worked for Me, published in 2012. Both books remain essential reading for anyone who wants to lead with excellence. General Powell passed away from this earth on October 18, 2021, at the age of 84. But hear me when I say this. He did not leave us. His legacy lives in every young person from the South Bronx who dares to dream bigger than their block. His legacy lives in every leader who chooses service over self. And tonight, his legacy lives in this conversation because tonight's guest, Carl Zev, is a man who shares that same undefeatable spirit, a man who started with nothing and built empires, a man who fell and rose again, a man who absolutely refused to let his circumstances define his ceiling. General Powell once said, "A dream doesn't become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work." Carl Zev lived that truth. And tonight we're going to hear every chapter of that story. We honor you, General Powell. Rest in power, sir. Your ceilings became our floors. Now let me introduce our guest tonight. So let me tell you something about tonight. Tonight is not a regular episode. Tonight is not just a podcast. Tonight, this right here is a movement. Welcome to AMIBW, Am I My Brother's Warden, which is tonight's theme for this show tonight. Season 4, episode 126. And if you haven't been rocking with us since day one, you already know we don't do average here. We don't do surface level here. When you sit down in front of this mic at AMIBW, you bring everything you've got, your victories and your scars, because our audience deserve the whole truth. And that is exactly what tonight's guest is going to give us. Tonight, we're talking about rising from nothing. We're talking about starting a company with $500, not $500,000, not $5 million, $500, and turning it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. We're talking about negotiating deals on the world stage. We're talking about what happens when it all comes crashing down, when depression steals your mind, your money, your home, and leaves you sleeping in your car. And this is the part I need you to hear. We're talking about what it looks like to get back up, because some of you listening right now are in the valley. Some of you are in the car. Some of you are in the lowest point you've ever been in your life, and you're wondering if there is a way back. Tonight's episode is your answer. Tonight's episode is your roadmap. I need you to do 3 things right now. First, I need you to lock in, put the phone down, put the distractions away, and be present in this conversation. Second, share this episode right now before it even starts, because you know somebody who needs this message. You know somebody who is one breakthrough away from their next chapter. Send this to them tonight. Third, be ready to be transformed, because that is what AMIBW does. That is our covenant with this community. Tonight's guest grew up on the hard streets of Newark, New Jersey. He graduated college, started a bread distribution company out of the trunk of his car, built average empires, including one of the first African-American owned bottled water companies on the East Coast. Negotiated a contract with the 1996 Summer Olympics and generated over $75 million in annual revenue. He lost it all, he rebuilt it all, and today he is one of America's top speakers, trainers, and high-performance coaches, helping people unlock the potential their minds have been hiding from them. Community family, I give you my brother, my inspiration, and tonight's extraordinary guest, Carl Zev. Welcome to AMIBW. Let's go. Hello, sir.
Charles, how you doing? How you been?
I am just excellent. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I cannot complain. I appreciate that introduction. Colin Powell was actually in Harlem, and I've met him once or twice in Harlem. because I'm from the North Jersey area and always into the New York City area. So I'm glad you mentioned Colin Powell. Great, great, great general. One of the best.
Yes, sir. So, is there any great words you'd like to say to our audience before we get into the show?
Well, I always like to say, just like what you said earlier, is to put away all the distractions, the phone, and just take the next 80 minutes, 90 minutes, however long we're on this program, and just focus in for this period of time. Whatever you think is important that's on that social media or might be on television, just put that aside because your present and your future is more important than anything that might be on social media and the way the distractions are out there for us to sort of take you from where you should be focusing. So just spend the next hour, whatever it is that we have here, and just really focus on it and take some notes because the information and nuggets that I want to drop to my community is something that I've learned throughout my life and also through working with some very wealthy individuals here in this country. And when you work with the 1%, you get these nuggets, you get this information that they pass it on to you. And it's always good for me to play it forward and pass it on to the community that's listening. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes, sir. So, what I like to do first, like, and just we as we chatted before, is I like to give the audience the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, the guest.
Hmm.
So, as we roll into all of these great things that you've got for us tonight, they get to know the real Carzel as we move forward.
Okay.
And this part is what I'm going to call origins and your early hustle. Um, Carl, let's go all the way back to Newark, New Jersey. If you would just paint the picture for our audience, what was life like growing up on those streets, and what did that environment teach you about survival?
Well, I tell you what, I grew up in the inner city, Newark, New Jersey, in the 70s. So the time that time period is not as dangerous as it is now. If you grew up in the inner city in the 70s, you have fist fights. Once in a while someone will come with a knife, but these days it's a little more dangerous out there. So it was more of a learning experience to be able to make it through that process of growing up in the inner city and having fights almost 2 or 3 times a week. There's always someone testing you, either on the way to school or from school or the way to the boys club. There's always a bully in the neighborhood, and you have to either stand up or be taken advantage of on. And so most of the time you learn to just stand up and just fight and hold your grounds. And then back then, if you pretty much held your ground, everyone gave you that respect and they left you alone. But if you was the type of person that would constantly allow them to tap your pockets like they used to do back then, or take your coins, or try to take your shoes, or whatever it is it might have been, if you allow them to do that, then eventually they're going to take advantage of you. But what I've learned from that is that it makes you tough, mentally tough, physically tough, and the endurance that it takes to go on in other aspects of your life. So even though those are childhood experiences that I've learned, but it helped me to overcome other obstacles as I became an adult, as I became a father, a husband, and as I became an entrepreneur, business owner. Those are all the tools that when I look back, I say to myself, wow, those experiences I had growing up in the city made me tough, develop a tough skin, being able to deal with the no's all the time, or being able to deal with the long hours in business, or maybe being able to deal with there's no funds in the bank and you're trying to figure out how things are going to work. The most important thing I learned is that you never ever, and I repeat this again, you never ever give up, no matter how bad it is. My dad, thank God, he's 100 and he's going on 101. He's still kicking, and he always told us that you think it's tough now, try giving up. So once you give up, it's really going to get tough. So you learn from those experiences, and you carry those experiences with you throughout your life. And that's what I learned growing up in inner city. Also, in my bio, it should have mentioned that I also suffer from dyslexia growing up. So that was another challenge throughout high school and into college. But you have these challenges and you have these situations that we all do. And the most important thing is that you have the endurance and you have the mindset, the mental toughness that it takes to overcome those challenges, because they're only challenges. You don't look at it as a negative experience. Look at it as a positive experience. You learn from those experiences that might be tough. But if you're trying to develop into a high earning person or a better person or reach that next level, you're going to have some challenges. You're going to be uncomfortable, and you have to be able to deal with the ability of being uncomfortable, and you got to be able to deal with that. And that's what I've learned in the inner city, because there were times where we didn't have a lot of food to eat, or I didn't have the proper clothing to wear, or didn't receive the gifts that I wanted for the holidays. And you learn to deal with that, and you buckle up, and you just keep moving forward. And that's what I learned in the inner city, Charles.
As you say that, and you started out with something that more than resonates with me is like, for the time that you and I grew up, there were those things that you talk about, the bully and things of that nature, right?
Right.
But when you compare, as you look at today compared to then, what do you think really makes that difference in that mental toughness and having that wherewithal to just be able to withstand pressure and keep pushing?
What do I think is I think today, well, back then, even though, you know, you grew up in the inner city, everyone is pretty much, I hate to use the term poor, but you're not well off. So you have things you do have and things you don't have, but you still had that community, that village sort of environment. And
Yeah.
even though, you had your bullies, but you still had your boys that was like down with you, that had your back, or there was parents on the block that was looking out for the kids. So there was always that community type environment. I'm not sure if it's like that now. From what I see, because my daughter is a detective in Newark, so she tells me the stories, which are horrendous, that I hear from her. But the environment in the inner city has changed. There was still respect on the streets back then when we grew up. You respect elderlies as they walk down the street. If you were doing something you shouldn't be doing, you didn't use foul language. You didn't curse in front of elderly people. So it was a different environment, different time, a different level of respect. Today, I don't see that. There's times I'm in a restaurant and I just hear the kids come in. They say whatever they want to say in front of whoever they want, and it's disturbing, but it's something that we can overcome. And I think I might have a solution for that, Charles.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us, were there specific moments in your childhood, people, places, or experiences that planted the seed of entrepreneurship in you before you even had vocabulary for it?
Oh yeah, sure. My dad owned several restaurants growing up, and I can go back even further. When I was probably about 6 or 7, my dad owned one of the largest newspaper routes in the city of Newark, and we would get up every morning about 5 o'clock, and myself and my 2 brothers, and we would go with my dad and deliver newspapers. So that was sort of an entrepreneurial business back then. It was a route business, and that was my first experience as to being an entrepreneur or a small business owner. So we would get up every morning, 7 days a week, even on Sundays before church, and make these deliveries to these people's homes. And that was the first experience I had. But then as I became a teenager, my dad owned several restaurants throughout my teenage years. So I learned it from him. And then also there was neighbors in my community that own businesses, and you work with them over the summer. So it was a inner city Black community, but there were business owners, and most of the business owners in my community were Black owned, not compared to like it is today. But back then you saw it, and you didn't really understand what was going on, but you learned from it. One summer I was running a restaurant with a friend of mine for his grandmother because she became ill, and we were probably 15, 16 years old. I don't think I was 16 at that time, probably 13 or 14. And we was running the restaurants. We opened up the restaurant. We turned on the grills. We cooked the food. We took the orders. We dealt with the suppliers. We handled the cash. I mean, we did it all. And so I guess growing up in my teenage years, I sort of was being groomed without even knowing it to become an entrepreneur. So when the time came for me to become a small business owner, to me, it was like second nature. It was like, it wasn't a risk for me. It was like, okay, this is what I already know. This is what I like to do anyway. So let's go ahead and do it. So that was some of the experiences. So there was other mentors that I grew up with. There was a gentleman that owned the Cleaners, a Black man. There was Mrs. Bowman. She just passed. She owned the restaurant. There was Again, my dad, I said, owned a paper route. So there was a lot of people in my life growing up, mentors that I didn't even know. Back then, we didn't know what the term mentorship mean back then, but there was people that was in my life that actually showed me how to run a business growing up.
So, what did your family look like growing up? Who were the foundational figures that shaped your character, and where were any of them? Well, you say your father was an entrepreneur, but was there any other person other than your father in your family that was an entrepreneur?
In my immediate family, no, but my mom was there. I had two older brothers. I have an older sister, and we all worked together as a family. But in an immediate family, no. And my parents are from the southern part of the country, Alabama. So when we went down
Oh,
south,
wow.
of course, my grandfather had a farm, and on that farm we had all the animals, and we did some farming, and that was almost every other summer we would go down there to Alabama.
Wow. So, what part of Alabama? Because I was born and raised in Mobile.
Oh, well, I got family in Birmingham, Mobile, Montgomery, but they
Oh,
originally
wow.
came out of a small town next to a town called Thomasville. The town was called Pine Hill, Alabama. Pine Hill,
Yes.
Alabama. And so that's where both of my parents are from the same town.
So you went to Uppsala College
Right.
and earned a degree in marketing in '86. How did that decision to go to college to study marketing specifically shape the entrepreneur you were becoming?
Well, what happened was that after just before I graduated from college, I went to the college. I'm sorry, just before I graduated from high school, I went to Uppsala College and visited, and then I got accepted. So when I graduated from high school, that next week I was actually in college. My parents was afraid that over the summer, things happen over the summer when you got too much free time. They said, well, you should go to school right after the next week and don't really have a summer break. I was like, well, okay. Then that's what I did. And at the college is where I was diagnosed. My second year in college, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And if anyone that's listening that might have experienced that or might be suffering from dyslexia, it's a reading learning disability. But I hate to call it disability because a lot of times the way the mind works, you might be um, deficient in something else. Like for me was reading, but in math, I can calculate numbers like it's nothing. So I looked at it as a situation to where it gave me a challenge to learn more and to push myself. But to give you a story about how I was diagnosed with dyslexia in college, I went to college because I went to college to play football and to run track. So coming from an inner city, the college I went to, Uppsala College, which is no longer in existence, was probably at the time 90% white, 10% black. Right. So imagine an inner city kid that's going to this college, and all of a sudden it's a culture shock, complete culture shock, because coming from Newark, you're around white teachers, you have a few white people in the neighborhood, but nothing like this. And knowing that I go there just to play football and to run track, typically they look at you as a dumb athlete. So I remember that still remember that day that the professor asked me to get up in front of class and read, and it caused an issue for me because when you have dyslexia, your brain is seeing one thing, your eyes are seeing something else, and something totally different is coming out of your mouth. It's almost like the words are encrypted. So when you're reading, you have to read at a certain speed, and it makes you appear to be illiterate, but you're not. It's just that you just read at a slower speed because your mind is moving so fast. You have to slow it down to calculate what is actually on the board. So of course, everyone in the class is laughing at me. And to give you an idea of the classroom size, is about Uppsala College had roughly about 30 students in each class. So the professor knew who you were. Everyone know your name. It's not like going to a big university where there's 2,000-3,000 people in the class and the professor never really know you, just know you by a number. So the professor called me up to the board. I couldn't really get through the paragraph the way I wanted to, and of course, everyone's laughing. and I hear someone in the back of the room they say, "Yeah, I told you he was just a stupid football player." So at that point in my life, and I tell the story because at that point, that was a crossroad in my life. I could have either given up on college because of the embarrassment and the ego that can come into play, or I did the right thing, which is figure out what the issue was, became diagnosed, got treatment, and was able to move on and finish my college and graduate with honors. So there's a time in everyone's life you're gonna have to either, as they say, man up or woman up and just bite the bullet, do what you have to do to get through whatever obstacle or struggle you might be dealing with at that time. Because I know that if I didn't finish school, I didn't want to go back to the inner city. I didn't want to go back to Newark because there's not really much going on down there that was going to take me to where I want to go. So I know at that point I had to really buckle down and figure out what the issue was and take care of it so I can move forward in my life to be able to improve my life. And that's what I did.
So after graduating, most people follow the conventional path and send the resume, get the job, start the 9 to 5. What was going through your mind that made you choose a completely different road?
Well, I started out 9 to 5 like everyone else, but growing up in the household that I grew up in and doing some entrepreneurial things throughout college, I invented a few different projects throughout college. So I always had that entrepreneur spirit in me. So when I went to corporate America, I worked in corporate America, I think initially for about 6 or 8 months, and I just didn't like the structure. I didn't like the pay structure. I didn't care for any of it. So I just decided to go out on my own, and I was looking at different distributorships. And at that time, there was a company in Harrison, New Jersey called Pector's Bread, which was one of the biggest bread manufacturers in the northern part of Northeast. And I became what they call a bread distributor. And I started that business with $500. And it's so funny because um, all my college buddies were laughing at me. They said, "Man, what are you doing delivering bread? You have a college degree." I said, "Well, I'm looking at the numbers because first of all, I can start work at 3:34 in the morning, and I'm done by 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm done. And you guys are just starting work. I'm done. I'm completely done. I put in 4 or 5 hours, and you guys are making back then. Everyone was happy making $350, $400 a week. I'm making 700, 800, got up to $1,800 a week, and this was back in 1980, 86, 87, somewhere around there. So I'm making a pretty good dollar delivering bread. So, and that's the reason why I got into it, because just my background and growing up in a household I grew up in where my dad had several restaurants and a large paper route distributorship.
Well, I've got a comment here in the chat, and
Okay.
I'm going to put it on the screen, and you can respond to this if you like.
Okay.
He says, "Perseverance is the key to victory."
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You have to push yourself. You can't give up, even when things look chaotic and completely out of your control. Of course, you put in God's hand and you move forward and you keep pushing. And that's the thing. You just keep taking that next step. You keep taking that next step. And you tell yourself, even when things look chaotic and completely out of control, you got to put in God's hand. You got to keep moving forward. So perseverance is very important to reach that victory.
If you could go back and speak to 18-year-old Carl, standing on the corner in Newark, looking at the world, what would you say to him, and what do you think he would say back?
What would I say? I would probably tell him to 18 years old. So I was still in college. I would probably say just focus. Well, what happens is that when you come from inner city and at 18, I probably was, like any other 18-year-old, I was playing sports and chasing girls. So I would probably just say focus more on playing sports. I think that what probably would have been my other avenue out of the inner city is playing sports, because I was very good in track and playing football. So I probably would have focused more on football and took it from there. But I still made out okay. and
You
he
know,
probably
so
yeah, and he probably would say back to me, I'm not giving up these girls, man. So I don't know what you're talking about. So
see, that's that 18-year-old. So
18 years old,
there's a lot going on there.
man.
So, you've done like an enormous amount of things here. And so as we go through, we're gonna pick these these different things here where, I really would love for our audience, as we said earlier, to get to understand and know these things as to the great success that you have. So I'm gonna start with that $500 startup mentality,
Right.
because I think that's what kicks off all of this wonderful work that you've done. So let's talk about Stokes Bread Distributors. You started that company with $500. Walk us through that decision. Where did the idea come from, and how do you turn $500 into a functional business?
Okay. One of the first jobs that I received coming out of college was being a night supervisor at a bakery in Newark. It's an Italian bakery called Paramount, and they're still around today. That was one of the first jobs, and I would go there from 10 at night to 6 in the morning, 6 days a week. And after about a year there, and I realized the drivers would come in 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, pick up their breads that we pack the orders for them, and take off and deliver. So I'm just assuming that they work for the bakery. I had no idea there was independent drivers or independent contractors. So I'm talking to the old man and they own the business. He said, no, everyone here is they work for themselves. They have their stores that they deliver to, and they make pretty good. I was making good money there as a night supervisor, but the drivers were making twice as much I was making as a night supervisor, and I couldn't believe it. So I talked to the owner. I said, listen, when I get off at 6, 7 in the morning, I want to be able to take some bread and maybe start selling to the stores in my local area and see what happened. So I did that, and about 6, 7 months into it, I realized I have a route, and that's how I started with 500 bucks. I had a route, and it got so good to where I was able to leave the job and take care of the family, buy a house. I mean, it really turned into something big. But really took off was that after having the route, or while I was having the route, I also met the owner of a company called Mystic Beverage. I met his son. His son also had a bread route. His son name was Eric, and I met him, and he told me that his dad was opening up a new beverage company and he's looking for distributors. And that's how I sort of got my way into the beverage industry, from meeting his son at the bread route business. And that's how I got into the beverage and eventually into bottled water.
So you were buying baked goods below wholesale and selling them at local delis and convenience stores.
Right.
That sounds simple on paper, but what was the grind actually like day to day, and what did a typical morning look like for you?
Well, the grind day to day was, you get up 3:30, quarter 4 in the morning, which is tough for anyone, especially during the winter days when there's snow on the ground and it's cold outside. But you get up 3:34, quarter 4 in the morning. You get to the bakery by 4:30. Your products and your orders are already packed for you. You pay for it and you put it on your van and you go make the deliveries. And you did that 6 days a week. The one thing about the bread business is 6 days a week. So that was the daily grind. But the great thing about it was that back then you're dealing with mom and pops, bodegas, and everyone either paid you by check or cash. There was some bill to bill. They pay you for the previous week and you still deliver to them. Then they pay you for the next week after that. And it built up and it got to a point where it was very lucrative for me. And that was pretty much the everyday grind. It was, of course, accounting involved. There was billing involved. You had to sign receipts, purchase orders. You learn how to do some sales. You have to go around when you were finished your route. You have to go around and try to have some extra products and open up some more accounts so you can build it up and get it bigger. And that's pretty much how that was pretty much the daily grind. It was 6 days a week. So I was working really probably about a good 6.5, 7 hours a day, but it was early morning. So by 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm done because everyone has to the dailies, the bakeries, the restaurants, everyone has to have their bread products in the morning before they actually open up. So you finish up pretty early. I'll tell you a little story about that though. I was living in a building in East Orange, New Jersey, and about a year and a half into it, money's coming in real good. So I went out and I bought myself a brand new BMW. Had to get a BMW, right? So I get myself a BMW. Now I'm a young guy in the building, and I have a wife and a newborn little girl, and the elderly people in the building, they see me leaving out 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, a young guy with a BMW. You know what they're thinking, right? And they thinking I'm doing some things I shouldn't be doing. So the supervisor, the superintendent of the building comes to my apartment one day, knocks on, and he's asking me what's going on. I said, oh, well, you know what? I own a bread route. So that's the reason why I get up so early, and I'm back at home by 9:30, 10. So they thinking I'm out there doing something I shouldn't be doing because I'm home all day and I'm driving a BMW and I got new sneakers on and the baby is dressed up well and the wife is living good. So they're saying he's got to be doing something he shouldn't be doing. Once the word got around that I was on had a bread route, of course, I became the most popular guy in the building. Everyone wants holiday dishes and breads and pastries and all that good stuff. So it was a really good learning experience.
So what was your biggest challenge in those early days with Stokes Bread, and how did you push through when it felt like the walls were closing in?
I think one of the biggest challenges was just that back then it was, life was still simple, very little internet, no cell phones. I had beepers, so it was, the expenses wasn't as high as they are now. And I think the biggest challenge was just really just trying to grow a business and trying to be a husband and a father at the same time and working those strange hours because when at that time my daughter was just born, so everyone was over to the apartment during the day and you're trying to sleep. So the challenge was more of a personal challenge than anything else. Business wise, it was pretty simple operation. The customers were either call in their orders. At that time, my wife would take the orders over the phone. She'd write it out on the order sheet, give them to me. I call them into the bakery. They pack it up. I go pay. I pick up the product and deliver. So it was a pretty simple operation. The biggest challenge was really just managing and juggling all that at one time because I had a newborn baby too. So that was probably the biggest challenge. Was more personal than business.
So now you after 3 years now you've got Stokes Bread, but now you sell it. You sell that distributors for $45,000. That's nearly a 9% return on your initial investment. So what was the moment like when the deal closed, and what did you do next?
Yeah. The reason why I sold the business is because, like I said earlier, I met the owner of Mystic Beverages. Mystic was very popular, similar to Snapple. Most people know Snapple. Mystic was a similar type beverage at that time. So I met the owner's son. He said, "Hey, my dad is opening up a new business over in Brooklyn. He's looking for distributors." So it was a great opportunity. See, the one thing about the bread business is that it's pretty much a one-day business. In other words, you can't deliver 2-day old bread. It's not going to happen. People are not going to buy from you. So, and the geographic area what you deliver, everything has to be pretty much in a radius area. You can't go too far out because you get there too late, so there's a lot of problems. So the bread business is almost a limitation to what you can do, what you can earn, and how you can grow it, unless you're the manufacturer, things of that nature. But when you're a distributor, you have limitations. So I looked at the bread business, then I looked at the beverage business. I said, well, the beverage business are packed goods that has a shelf life that's going to last longer, and there's more people out there that's going to buy. There's more stores. It's going to be a bigger sell, more revenue, more profit. So I decided to sell the bread route and go into the route business, the beverage business.
So tell us, the actual determination, because what's interesting about that, as you say, the beverages got the longer shelf life. Like, what was it about what could happen in the beverage industry that you saw an opportunity that would actually give you that chance to not only do what you were doing, but to do it at a much better pace, much higher return on the investment?
Wow, I'm going to tell you a story that's going to blow your mind right now about the beverage business. And like I said, you put in God's hand, you keep the faith, and doors do open. So when I started out in the beverage industry, it was a beverage route. I had two partners, and we started the business probably in the month of, I think it was November, somewhere around there. What year? It was probably had to be somewhere around 89. We started that business. And we started in November. So back then, beverages was still considered to be a seasonal type product. It's not as glamorous as it is now. Back then it was, the basic flavors. You had Coke, you had Pepsi, you had some bottled water brands, but not many. You had the grape orange, root beer, cream sodas, things like that. There was no new age beverages like they have now, like vitamin water and all the others. So it was more of a seasonal type business at that time. So when we started the business, we ran for about the first 6 or 7 months, up until probably May. We didn't do anything. There was very little business going on because it was a new product that no one knew about. It was a product called Mystic Beverages, and it was a product made with all natural flavors. They used spring water back then, so it was like a new age beverage, and people were really skeptical about it. So by the time that 6 month, both of my partners, they decided to get out of it. I said, well, I'm gonna stick with it. And little did I know, when June came around, when the weather warmed up, that's really where the business is at. And the weather warmed up, and all of a sudden, the sales skyrocketed. And we went from doing, say, $2,000 or $3,000 a week to 20, 30 to $40,000 a week in business. It was just unbelievable. And that was one of the biggest things about it. Now, the great thing about the beverage business, the Mystic business, is that there was a gentleman, I'm going to drop some names. There was a gentleman by the name of Aubrey Lewis Sr. He was the first Black FBI agent, and he played football for Notre Dame back in the 60s out of Montclair, New Jersey. I knew his son, Aubrey Lewis Jr., and his son knew I had the beverage company. And this is where all the contacts and network starts to come into play. When you know people, you rub elbows with the right people. Well, he took me over to see his dad, who happened to be one of the VPs of Woolworths. Remember Woolworths Corporation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Woolworths, right, right. And this is, just the way God lined things up for me. And he says, hey, my dad works for Woolworths, and let's go over to the city, the headquarters, and bring some beverages and see if he can get you into Woolworths. I was like, man, I can't do business with Woolworths. I'm a little guy. I don't have the infrastructure, the trucks and everything, the warehousing to set up to do business with Woolworths. But we went over there, and his dad liked the product. He calls the purchasing manager downstairs. He come in and he says, can we put this on the shelf? And the purchasing manager said, yeah, I can do that. He said, when you want to start? I said, well, let me see how much you're going to buy. What are you going to need? They actually funded me and made me from what I was earning to being pretty wealthy by paying the bills, paying for every delivery COD for the first year to all the
Oh,
stores.
wow.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? So what happened was that it was a situation where they would pay, I think it was up to $1,000 per store from the petty cash for each delivery. So every time we made a delivery, as long as it wasn't over $1,000, they would pay petty cash right out of the store. So it took me from one truck to, I think I had 4 or 5 trucks at one time. It just blew us up. We had a warehouse, 30,000 square foot warehouse in Newark. I mean, it was everything. So it was just a matter of everything was just lining up for me. Like the stars were lining up, all the universe, everything was lining up for me. And that's how I got to be in the beverage business on a big end. Now, the other side was that they wanted me to supply all the Woolworths up and down the East Coast, but I couldn't because in the beverage industry, typically you have a territory, you have a district, and you can't supply everyone. So I couldn't supply all of the Woolworths, only the Woolworths in my area, but every other Woolworths that had the Mystics, I did receive a small percentage of it. So that's what really took me off from one level of being a business owner to the next level.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna save that part because that's gonna be our transitioning part. But let me finish up here about the, with you starting with the bread company, because the thing that sets this off so is the $500 start.
Yeah.
And so with that being the actual foundation here of this story, can you just what can you say to the people today who claim they can't start a business because they don't have enough money?
Well, that's a that's a negative mindset you shouldn't have, especially this day and time where you can start a business online with nothing. I mean, you don't need inventory. The company will drop ship directly to the customer for you. All you need is a website and some orders, and you can. There's so much you can do. You can start a business building a product, selling a product, and take the orders first, and then use that money to build the product and then ship it out. So to give you an example, say if you wanted to make cookies, or say you want to make cookies, cakes. You have some samples of them. You send some samples out. You put together a website, and you don't have to go out and bake 100 cookies right away or 100 cakes right away. What you need to do is take the orders and then give yourself a leeway, some time. Say your delivery will be in 2 weeks. Now you get the funds in. You go buy your ingredients. You bake everything. You ship it out within 2 weeks, and the company is funded by the customer's purchases. And so there's no reason why you can't start a business without having, you don't necessarily need money these days. You can start a business with your credit card, or you can start a business just pre-orders. That's the best way to start a business these days. So what you need is the idea and the willpower and the perseverance to get it done, to make it happen. That's what you need these days with technology and AI and everything else that's out there.
So, what core principle did Stokes Bread Distributors teach you about business that you carried into every company you built after it?
What I learned from that business is that you learn how to deal with people, customers. You learn how to deal with requests. You learn how to deal with some hiccups that might come along when things don't go right, where the bread wasn't as fresh as it should have been, or it might have been damaged for whatever reason. You learn how to deal with the people from that perspective, and you learn how to overcome any problems, and you learn how to solve problems, because when you're dealing with a perishable like a bread, there's always going to be some issues. But so you have to learn how to control your own emotions and how to communicate and how to satisfy the customer's needs when there's an issue, and how to make them happy so they can come back to do business with you in the future. So that's what I learned from the bread business.
So now let's talk a whole lot more now about the building of your beverage empire. After bread, you moved into beverages. You became a distributor for Mystic Beverages, supplying accounts like Rutgers University, Seton Hall, and AT&T. How did you make that pivot, and what did you see in the beverage space that others were missing?
Well, back then, you're looking at, there was very few beverages on the shelf back then. The big ones, of course, still around, Pepsi and Coke, and they controlled all the shelf space. They controlled all the refrigerators in the stores and everything. So, and they always leave a shelf or two for independent guys, as long as you're not taking too much of the shelf space within the store. But I think in the beverage business, I just, you learn it's a bigger business. Is It's a bigger territory. The dollars are bigger. There's more work involved. There's a lot more equipment involved, but you're dealing with a product with a shelf life. So the shelf life is longer. You learn how to deal with that. There's so many things I learned from the beverage business. But then I realized when I got too big, there was a time where it was pretty big in the Essex County, where Newark is located, that other distributors outside of the area was getting upset because I was making too much money. As a black man back then, he's just making too much money. So there were some issues with other distributors that wouldn't come into the area that I was in, but they was upset because I was making too much money. We all know how that goes. You don't want to go there and make delivery, but you're upset that I'm making delivery and I'm making the money. Come on now. So went through that, and had some issues with Pepsi Cola of all companies at one time. Pepsi had asked me to carry their products, and I said, no, we're more of a new age type beverage company. Um, And they had a guy coming around for about 2 years trying to get me to carry Pepsi, because at that time, none of the other distributors wanted to come into the inner city to deliver, which is because what happens back then is that the guys will follow the route trucks into the last stop, and then the last stop they stick you up, because back then it was mainly cash and checks. So
Yes.
a lot of distributors would not come in the area. But I'm from the inner city. We know how to handle ourselves, and we know how to look over our shoulders and make sure no one was following us. We changed our routes up sometimes, so it was an issue. But Pepsi eventually, we did a little ocean spray products, and that was it. But yeah, it was learned a lot from the beverage industry. But one thing I did learn from the beverage industry is that I still didn't have the complete control that I needed to really expand, because it wasn't my product. That's what I learned from the beverage industry. It wasn't mine. Well-known product, great distributorship, but I didn't have the complete control, because I should have made a lot more money with Woolworths if it was my own product. And that's when I sort of started leaning towards the bottled water industry.
So getting into Rutgers and Seton Hall and AT&T as a distributor are major institutional wins, but how did you land those accounts, and what was your pitch, and what did you do differently from the competition?
I think what I did differently from the competition is something I learned again from the route business and the bread business, is that as we made our deliveries to our existing customers along our routes, there was also customers on our routes, or potential customers on our routes, that we would stop by on a regular basis and just to say hello. And that's how I was able to pick up Seton Hall first. So Seton Hall had their distributors, and we were as distributors trying to get into Seton Hall. And there's happened to be one summer where they were completely out of their beverages. We happened to pull up just to say hello. And it was a time where the guy said, "Hey, you got any extra beverages?" I said, "I have some extra beverages, but if we give you these beverages, we want to be one of your distributors." They said, "No problem." Their local distributor was out of beverages for whatever reason. So that was a way in which I was able to get some big accounts, because it's almost like you're being a salesperson, and in sales, it tell you that in order to close a customer, it takes 4 to 5 visits or contacts with that particular customer, where the average salesperson will give up after that second or third contact. Well, what I learned is that whenever I wanted to go after an account, even though they're not our existing customer at that time, I would still pop in. Don't even talk business. Just say hello. How you doing? Spend 5 minutes with them. How's it going? Okay. Hopefully I'll see you soon. And I would stop in like every, maybe once or twice a month, just to say hello. And I know at one time, I know there will be a time that I catch them when they're going to be out of beverages. And that's going to be my way in. That's how I was able to get into Seton Hall and Rutgers and some of the other big schools in the North New Jersey area and some of the other big accounts.
In 1993, you founded Virgin Springs, one of the first African American owned bottled water companies on the East Coast. How did you come up with that idea, and did you understand the historical significance of what you were doing at that time?
At the time, I didn't understand how important it was, but I knew it was an opportunity, because when you go back then, the bottled water industry in the United States was only about $300 million. So it wasn't big. A lot of people wasn't buying bottled water. In fact, my dad thought I was nuts for going into the bottled water business, because he said water is free over the tap and it comes right out. Then I told him, I said, you know what? I said, "Dad, that's not really water. That's a utility. It's classified as a utility. It's not really used, shouldn't be used for drinking, but we drink with it, but it's more of a utility." So I decided to go into the bottled water business because I saw a trend coming, and it looked like more and more people was buying bottled water. And that's when I decided to bottle my own water, have my own brand, because I know I would have complete control over what stores it was delivered, how far I can go out, what pricing, everything was up to me. And that's when I really got out of the beverage industry. I sold the beverage end of the business and went and focused strictly on bottled water, because now I had complete control. I had control of the packaging, the labeling, the what stores, how many bottles on the shelf, what size. I want to use PET bottles, gallons, 5 gallons with water coolers. I mean, we did everything at one point. And that's the reason why I decided to get into bottled water. Besides that, I mean, everyone was drinking bottled water these days, like they are now. People started drinking bottled water. So I saw the trend, and I decided to leave the beverage end of the business and just focus strictly on bottled water.
So, building a bottled water company in the early 90s as a Black entrepreneur in New Jersey, what were the barriers, the skeptics, the doors that were closed to you, and how did you get through those situations?
Yeah, I can tell you a story about that. For the maybe first 4 or 5 years, it was pretty easy. It wasn't really difficult until I got to a certain amount where I was buying from one bottling plant out in Pennsylvania. So how it worked, it went like this. We had the labels. I didn't have the actual plant. It's called private packaging, which everybody does now. So I designed the labels, have the marketing company design the labels, put the QR code and everything on there, and ship it out to the bottling plant and tell them what size bottles I want those labels to be on, how many trailers we need of that, how many cases on the pallet, how many bottles in the case, things of that nature. And then they will bottle it up, package it, and ship it down to our warehouse. So being the only Black-owned bottled water company in Northeast, I couldn't tell anybody I was Black-owned. And because people are funny, right? So I couldn't tell anyone
Yes.
that it was Black-owned. And people back then, they said, "Oh, where they getting this water from? Black people got water now? What's going on?" You probably using tap water,
I'm
water
sorry.
hose, crack, you get all kind of stuff going people's head. So for the first 4 years or so, the trailer would come down multiple times a week to the warehouse, and the driver would say, "Hey, where's the owner?" And I'm on the forklift. I said, "Man, the owner's never here. He's some rich guy, and he's just always on vacation. We're here. We pay you in advance. Give us a water. No big deal." And that went on for quite some time. But what happened was that I made the mistake one summer where the bottling plant um, had renovated the entire plant, and they invited all their customers up to the plant in PA. Now I'm in the woods of PA, a town called Laurel Run, PA. It's probably what I'm talking about. It's way up in PA in the mountains, and ain't no brothers around, man. I mean, I think I saw one Black person. It was a squirrel. I was looking at the squirrel. Squirrel looked at me. I was like, hey, what's up, bro? And that's the first time I saw black squirrels up in PA, man. I didn't know it was a black squirrels out there. And I made a mistake. I went up there, and about time I got back to the plant, they had cut us loose, bro. The bottling company cut us loose and said they can't deliver to us no more now. Never missed a payment. Always gave them certified funds. Never had a problem with them. The problem was it was a Black man owning a bottled water company, and they didn't want to have anything to do with that. And that was the biggest learning lesson I learned. And it was an experience because it was in the beginning. It was in the summer, June, and it's right in the middle of the season. And I had to find another supplier, another bottling plant to bottle up the water. Now the problem with that was that bottled water from one plant is not going to be the same coming from another plant because all brands are different based off where the water is coming from, the minerals, the rocks that it runs over, the spring, everything. Excuse me. The taste is totally different. So if you taste Poland Springs compared to Zaka or Ziffin Hill or Ice Mountain, they all taste different. So we lost a lot of customers because of that. And that was a learning experience. But that's what happens when you're dealing with racism for no reason. And that's what I learned back in the bottled water business.
So eventually you sold Virgin Springs to the Culligan Water Corporation.
Right.
What was that process like, and how do you know when it's time to sell, and how do you negotiate the exit without leaving value on the table?
Well, back then, and just like now, the bottled water industry, when I sold the company, we were doing a little bit of everything. When I say a little bit of everything, we had PET bottles, which are the small bottles. Some people call them half liter, 16 ounces, 2-liter bottles. Then you have the gallon size. And then by that time I sold to Culligan, we were doing 5-gallon water deliveries to the home. And we had water coolers out there. So back then in the 90s, And up until, I guess maybe 2008, 2009, you had the monthly rental of the water coolers in the business or in the home. So it was residual income coming in. So the value is probably back then was 4 or 5 times what your annual revenue was, somewhere in that range, because of the monthly rental of the water coolers. So say, for example, if you have let's say it's an easy number to calculate, 1,000 water coolers out there, and you have 1,000 people paying you $10 every month for the water cooler. So that's $10,000 in revenue coming in just from the water cooler. But if you got 10,000 coolers out there and people paying you $10, you got 100 grand coming in every month in revenue just from the water cooler. So while that $100,000 is coming in from the revenue from the water cooler, the rental is calculated 3 to 4 times its value, because they look at the average time a cooler stays in a location, which is about 3 to 4 years before it's replaced or the count is closed, something of that nature. So that had a big part of what the value was. So Culligan at that time is also called Pearl Water, and they were going around buying up small distributors. So they was inflating the numbers much more than what it was. And I think the reason why they were doing that, because they were looking to take the company public. So they wanted as much on the books as possible to make it attractive. So when they went public, so whatever the revenue was, they was paying 4 to 5 times that amount. So you got to be almost stupid not to take the money at that point, because they're paying you now for 10 years of work. So I mean, you get to a point to where you say, well, you know what? One thing I learned about business is that it's not really good to fall in love with your business. You can love what you do, you love the business, but don't fall in love with your business. And a lot of times people do that; they fall in love with their business, but you got to know when to get out. If it's a time to get out, and my business at that time was at its peak for what I saw, and it was being purchased well above this peak amount. So it was an opportunity for me to get out and do some other things, and that's the reason why we sold to Culligan.
So between Virgin Springs and Poland Spring, you had already built, scaled, and exited multiple businesses. At what point did you realize this wasn't luck, that you had an actual system, a replicable, a repeatable blueprint for building companies?
Yeah. I think after the sale of Virgin Spring Water, by the way, the owner of Virgin Airlines, when we came out with the name Virgin Springs Water, sent us a cease and desist letter saying we couldn't use the name, and I still have that letter, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah,
Richard, what's his name? That
Bronson,
owns
Richard
that.
Bronson.
Yeah.
His attorney, not him personally, but his attorney sent us a letter saying we couldn't use the name, and my attorney said, "Oh, yes, we can." So they didn't really; they were just trying to bully us, but we continue to use the name. But it was interesting. But yeah, you sort of grow a business, unless it's something that you can pass down from generation to generation, then you hold on to it. But in my case, the bottled water business is a tough business. It's a blue collar business. It's a lot of work involved, a lot of moving parts between deliveries, warehousing, employees, accidents, bad products. It's a lot involved in the bottled water business. And if you don't have anyone that's going to take over the business, a family member, then when you get to the peak, it's time to sell, and that's what I did.
So let's talk about the 1996 Olympics deal and your major negotiations, because as I was reading your bio and after we had talked and so forth, and I just found all of this to be like totally amazing, because I'm actually I'm sorry to say this, but I'm being honest, is that I look at you and I'm like, that's real Black excellence.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You didn't just stay even keel. You went all the way up. You scaled all the way up. And all I could think about is when I came here to Atlanta before I moved here, I came here for the Olympics. And I'm like, I can just reminisce and remember seeing those bottles from your company, but had no idea until just now. Of course, the hindsight's 2020, but I thought that was awesome. But In 1995, you negotiated a multi-million-dollar bottled water contract with the 96 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. Take us into that room. Who was on the other side of that table, and how did you even get yourself in front of those decision makers?
Well, there was a group of us, a group of Black business owners, and I believe the person that was leading it was a CPA from Union, New Jersey. I'm trying to think of his name. I think it was Jones. I believe his last name was Jones, and he was leading the sale of different products to the Olympics committee. And back then, of course, they always had a percentage of the business for minorities, so it was sort of easy to get in. But it took a long time. It took us about 2 years to really close all the deals. But the great thing about it is that there was no Black owned bottled water companies looking to do business with the Olympic besides mine. And so it made it almost like a novelty that to have a Black owned bottled water company doing business with the Olympics, and that's why I was able to get it. But what happened was that I tell you a little trick of the trade was that it would have been impossible for us to ship the water from PA down to Atlanta because of the cost of trucking, because water is heavy. We wouldn't have made any money. So what we did, there was a spring in a town called Lithium. I believe is there a Lithium, Atlanta, Lithium, Georgia? Is that correct? You ever heard of
Say
that
that one
place?
more time. What's the name of it?
I think it's called Lithium.
I don't know about lithium. That could be. I live in Lithia Springs,
Okay,
but there could be a lithium, and that's actually going south of Atlanta.
okay. Well, I know there was a spring down there. I think it was called Lithium, and we used them to bottle the water for us to cut back on the trucking cost and the warehouse cost. So that's why I was able to do the project. But it turned out to be a little over $3 million in revenue, and it was great because it was a short span. It was so much water being purchased in a matter of, I think it was 12 days, but it took us about 2 years to put it all together. So we started actually back in '94. So the negotiation went from '94 up until '95 and got everything calculated and signed, and then it happened in the summer of '96. Across the table was just the Olympic Purchasing Committee that we were negotiating with. It came down to they had to give some minorities some business, and I was one of them. So it was sort of like being in the right place at the right time with a product that no one else was carrying. So it worked out for us.
So I got another comment here. This is from Brian Zion. I'll put
Okay.
this on the screen for you. And what it is it's a muscle and looks like a notepad and something
And
else.
the
But
pen looks like a pen. All right, Brian. Ah, that's what I'm talking. Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We have to, as a community, man, we just got to learn how to, learn the tricks of the trades and to keep pushing it and don't give up, don't quit, just keep moving, man, keep moving forward. You know,
So, what was your preparation process going into a negotiation of that magnitude? And how did you make sure you were the most prepared person in that room?
I think just trying to get an idea of how they pass purchasing of bottled water. Who did they buy from before the other Olympics? What did they normally buy? How much? Things of that nature. Price structure. I looked at it like any other business deal. We just want to make sure that our numbers match to our profit margin and make sure we didn't hurt ourselves and we didn't hurt them most of all. But we wanted the idea was really is to get the brand name out there even more, because now you got people from all over the world looking at your brand, all over the country looking at your brand. Someone's going to want to buy it, and that's what took place. So the goal was sometimes you use those type of events as a marketing tool more than a profit tool, and that's how I looked at it, as I was marketing my brand to the world compared to a local part of New Jersey, New York. So that's how I looked at it.
So, was there a moment during the Olympics negotiation when the deal was about to fall apart? If so, walk us through a critical inflection point and how you navigated it.
Yeah, I think that happened when we realized, we were so excited to be on in that room talking, and we realized the numbers didn't really match up to what we wanted because we were shipping the water. And initially, we were going to ship the water from PA, so we had to scramble and find a good spring that the Olympic Committee accepted that we can use their water, because you just can't just switch brands. You can't just switch springs without the committee knowing where the water is coming from. So we had to make sure that they were okay with that. So that was an issue that could have killed the deal, because there was, like I said before, there's no way we would have been able to ship the product from PA, the mountains of PA, down to Atlanta and turn a profit at the same time. So finding that spring in Georgia that was able to bottle the water for us was critical to closing the deal.
So you later contracted with Poland Springs as director of sales for their largest North American distributor, a
Right.
$75 million plus annual revenue operation with over 50,000 customers. How do you scale that kind of operation, and what was your leadership philosophy at that level?
Well, my leadership philosophy has always been I lead by example. So if if I want a salesperson at the time to close a certain amount of sales, I show them how to do it. I actually will go out to the stores or to the accounts with them and show them how to make a sale, and retrain everybody. And that's how I pretty much lead from example. I'm like one of those old time generals that's out there fighting the war with you, not just in the office in the air conditioning sipping on coffee, saying, "Let's look at the screen, see who the hell is getting killed, and we're gonna drop a bomb." I was one of those guys that will go out there on the battlefield with you and actually fight. And that's how I led. Now, what was the other part of that question?
And what was your leadership philosophy at that level?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Just lead by example. Lead by example. Show them. Yeah.
So you grew Poland Springs distributor sales by over 300% in less than 2 years.
Right.
What specific strategies, systems, or mindset shifts produced that result? And what were you doing at that no one else was doing? What was you doing?
Well, that particular distributorship, I won't mention the name, but they um, they had a sales team, and they weren't really being managed properly. So I had to go in and just restructure the whole department, and just really increase the price a certain percentage, giving the new sales team a certain percentage, a higher commission structure, and just helping them to revamp the routes. Instead of delivering in the bottled water business, you can make more profit back then if you deliver twice twice a month instead of every week. So instead of delivering every week to a house, we said let's deliver every 2 weeks. Now, what's going to happen is that's going to make the customer buy more. So they're gonna buy more every time you deliver to them. Plus, on the back end, there's less wear and tear on your trucks and your drivers. There's less gas, less repairs, less tolls. So you're making money from you're reducing your expenses on the back end because you're only delivering twice a month compared to 4 times a month, and you increasing your revenue because now they have to buy more. Now, what you do is that you might drop the price just a little to get them that incentive to buy, say, 8 bottles instead of 4. But that's the price drop that you give them. It looks good to the customer, but it's not really hurting you because you're making the money up on the volume of more bottles being delivered and less wear and tear on your trucks and your drivers also. So now a driver can instead of making say 50 stops a day, only needs to make 30 stops a day. As long as he has the proper equipment, he can make 30 stops instead of 50 and still do the same amount or more in revenue which means more revenue for the business, less wear and tear on the trucks and drivers, and the customer is happy because now they have a bigger supply of water. So that was one of the ways to increase the sales by over 300%.
Let me ask you this. So just to clarify this, because what you're saying, I mean, that's a really good, and I just want to say it sounds like good sales. I'll just put it like that. That's good sales. Because are you saying that in order to make that for less deliveries, are you saying to actually have them sign a contract for a wider space? And when I say a wider space, I'm talking about in time in which you're delivering, which means they're actually getting more water each time you drop off.
Right.
Wow.
Right. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yes. So you've negotiated at the highest levels of business, corporate giants, Olympic organizations, and institutional buyers. What is the single most important thing most people get wrong about negotiation? Because this is key.
Probably over talking. The first
Y'all
person
know when to be quiet.
Yeah, the first person that mentioned price is the loser. So don't over talk. Let the customer talk. You listen, say a few words, and they're going to tell you exactly what they want. Now, once you have it set in your mind, you have an idea of what they want. Now it's time for you to close the deal. And how do you close the deal? I would say to you, Charles. So Charles, you're telling me, Charles, let's say I'm selling you a car, right, Charles? And Charles comes in. Charles wants that Mercedes, and he wants a black one, but we only have the dark blue and the silver, dark silver. But he's okay with either one. So, Charles, we don't have the black one. How you like that blue one? It's all right. You go with the blue one. I go with the blue one. So, the price might be a little higher. But I'm going to say to you, Charles, if I can get you that blue Mercedes for the price of that black Mercedes, do we have a deal today? And I'm going to shut up.
Okay.
The motto is, if I can get you that price, would you buy? And then I'm going to shut up. And Charles is going to sit there. You're going to look at me and say, yeah, you give me that price on that blue one, I'll take it today. I got you. I'm waiting for you to say, if you get me that price, when I know I can get you that price of the blue one for the black one, the same price of the black one, you would take it today, because that blue one was actually more valuable than that black one. So now in your mind, psychologically, you're thinking you're getting more for your money. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say, if I can get you that blue one for the price of that black one, Charles, will you buy today? And Charles says, yes. I say, let me see if I can do that for you. Now, to make you want it even more, I'm going to take it away from you. And I'm going to say, I'm not sure if I can do that, Charles. Let me check and see. Let's see what happens. Give me a few minutes. Now you're itching to buy it. Even if I came back with a little higher price, you're going to buy it. So I'm going to come back and say, Charles, I wasn't able to get the price of the blue one for the black one. It's going to be a little higher, maybe $500 more, but that's the best we can do, because that blue one just is very valuable. It's too late, man. I got you. You're going to buy it at that price that I want to sell it at you. So, and that's how you do it. That's how you negotiate.
Oh, wow.
Never over talk. Never over talk.
So here we go. So now, you're doing all of these wonderful things here. All is going well. And, I want to talk a little bit about, when things kind of like went a little haywire. And so I want to let's talk about the fall, the depression, the loss, and the homelessness. So you've been open about one of the most painful chapters of your life, when depression cost you everything.
Right.
So I want to honor the vulnerability, and I want to go there with you. When did you recognize that something was wrong? What did the beginning of the fall feel like?
Well, it happened after the death of my mother. That's when it happened.
Oh,
When like most black families, the mom is the matriarch that control, that sort of everyone feeds off of. So when that happened, I went to that deep depression, and it just took me into a place that I've never been before, and it took me to a place to where I was doing very little communication with anyone, not even my wife at that time, or my children. The good thing about the situation is that my children were already a pretty, someone they were in college and high school, so they wasn't small kids. They were already pretty much already well taken care of. So it was a situation where I just sort of just was out in the wilderness by myself, man, for a period of time, in the streets of New York, believe it or not. And I have a lot of respect for people that's out there like that, because some people can't make it back. I think what helped me make it back was that my faith in God, my parents, the upbringing, and coming from the tough streets of Newark, where you learn to overcome obstacles and distractions and depression and things like that, which is something that's big in our community that we typically don't talk about. And when I was able to overcome that, and that's what led me to my profession that I'm in today, which is uh, mental toughness and learning about the subconscious mind and teaching that. And that's what I've been teaching for the past 20 years. So yeah, that's what really led to it, the death of my mom, and it was a tough time, but I was able to overcome it and make it back to and beyond to where I was at before. So it was a tough time, but you go through it, you deal with it, you be tough, you keep your faith, and it all works out. It makes you a better, stronger, more understanding, humble individual. That's what it did for me.
so depression doesn't announce itself with a billboard, so it can creep slowly.
Right.
For a man who had negotiated Olympic contracts, built multi-million-dollar companies, what does depression look like when it shows up in someone of your caliber? How does it disguise itself?
Well, depression really is when anyone that's a high achiever, that's a go-getter, that's mentally tough and strong and is always trying to get to that next level, you're going to run into depression, because depression is really when the mind is telling you that you've hit that ceiling, right? You hit that ceiling, right? And you feel like you can't achieve anymore. So depression is really a stepping stone to the next level. And that's how I look at it. When I find myself in a situation where I'm feeling depressed, is because I probably have maxed my goals. I reached my goals. It's time for me to regroup and set some new goals and keep pushing. Because what happens, and when you're depressed, you're sort of when your person is depressed, it's normally when you're too comfortable, right? Depression comes in when you're sitting around not doing anything. You start thinking, and your mind starts. So now you're getting too comfortable. So now it's time to regroup, set some new goals, and keep pushing forward. If not, depression is something that can always come back. You got to know how to manage it. Now I know how to manage it. I manage it by, of course, meditation, exercising, eating right, getting good sleep, those things, but also being self-aware of what's going on in my mind, what I'm thinking, how I'm thinking. Am I thinking negative or positive? These are things that we teach now, and that's one of the reasons why I got into the field that I'm in. But yeah, it's a mechanism. It's almost like a wake up call that it's time for myself personally to set some new goals and start moving to the next level. That's what I look at. That's how I look at depression.
So you lost your fortune, you lost your home, you found yourself sleeping in your car and at airports. I want our audience to really feel the weight of that, because you were a man that had gotten to the top of the world. What was going through your mind during those nights?
You know, Charles, it's hard to say what was going through my mind at that time because when you're depressed like that, you're not really thinking clearly at all. From what I remember, you just don't. It's almost that time period. Whatever it was, a year and a half, 2 years. It was almost like a fog. It's like I was like in a fog. You ever been in a fog and you can't see? You can't see in your front of you, the back, your left, right. You have no direction of which way to go, and that's how I felt. So depression is something that you wouldn't, if you saw me back then, you would never know because I was still dressed, I was still groomed. I looked normal. If you saw me in a coffee shop, I looked normal, but it was a tough time. But you have to just you know put your faith in God and keep holding on and keep pushing, man. Just keep grinding. You got to keep grinding out, man. You got to keep pushing it, and you can make your way through it. But you have to be self-aware. Self-aware is the key. That's the key to dealing with that, is being self-aware and knowing that you're thinking those negative thoughts, because those thoughts can control your emotions. And in our training, we teach people how to be self-aware of that, because of how the subconscious mind controls everything, about 90% of what we do. So once you learn how the subconscious mind works, then you know how to operate and how to control your life based off your subconscious mind. And that's what we teach today.
So, was there a specific moment, a night, a conversation, a sign that became your turning point? The moment you decided you were going to fight your way back?
I can't remember exactly the time, but I knew that, you get to a point, you say, you know what, I'm tougher than this. I'm a kid from the streets of Newark. Whatever it is, I can get through it. I'm not a chump, a punk back then, as we call it. I gotta get myself together and make it through. I have a family that's looks up to me. I have business partners and employees that looked up to me. So I gotta get my act together, and that's what I was thinking. I gotta, whatever it is, I gotta pull up out of it. I couldn't give up, and that's what really pushed me to get out of that situation.
What do you want men, especially black men, to take away from this part of your story? Because so many of our brothers are suffering in silence right now, convinced that asking for help is weakness. What do you say to them?
No, the weakness is not asking for help. You have to be strong to ask for help. That's like if you're a person that studied the martial arts. I studied Taekwondo and Kung Fu, and people that study the arts. You have to be strong to restrain yourself from a person that you can take them out just like that. So you have to be strong enough to realize that you can't go through this life journey all by yourself. If you got issues, things that you're dealing with depression, whatever it might be, get some help. Talk to somebody. They can talk to me if they like. It's nothing wrong with asking for help. And that's one of the biggest issues we have in our community, that we don't talk about depression and mental illness, but you have to talk about it in order to overcome it. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help, man. That's the biggest thing. Ask for help. Ask for help. You're not being soft by asking for help. You're being strong by asking for help.
So now let's talk about the 7 steps to self-improvement.
Yeah.
Your seven steps to self-improvement were both directly out of your experience with depression and homelessness. Walk us through how those steps took shape. Was this something you deliberately sat down and designed, or did it emerge organically as you were rebuilding?
It came to me organically through God, and doing a lot of research and thinking and figuring out why I was in the funk that I was in back then, and what can I do to get out of it. And that's when it came to me, this vision that the 7-step program, called the Focus Mind, can change a person's life, because the nucleus of whatever you do in life is your mindset. Everything based around your mindset. The food you eat, the clothes you wear, the work you do, the money you spend, the habits you have, the relationships, everything is based on what you think. So I'll give you a little tip. It's called tears. And you can write this down. It's capital T period, E period, A period, R period, S period, tears. So tears stands for your thoughts control your emotions will control your actions, and your actions will control your life results. The RS stands for results. So if you control your thoughts, you're able to control your emotions. If you can control your emotions, you can control your actions. If you're able to control your actions, you can control your life results. And that's based off that's the foundation of our training, the focused mind. It's based off your daily habits. And how do you control your habits? By understanding the subconscious mind and what you're thinking about, when you are thinking. Most people do not, believe it or not, 90% of the people really don't think. They run off a autopilot, a program it was just called your paradigm that you learn throughout your childhood, your teenage years, your young adult into your adulthood. You're just doing these habits based off your environment, what your parents showed you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, all this based off, you pick up their habits. You actually live their habits, not yours. And that's called your paradigm. So um, that's really the foundation of what we teach here at Zev University Mindset Mastery is the paradigm, learning to understand the subconscious mind. And if you learn to understand your subconscious mind, you can change your habits. There's an old saying you can't teach your old dog new tricks, but that's not true. Anyone can change their life if they really want to do it. If they really want to do it, they have to go through the process. It could be done, but it takes some time. But it took you time to get to where you're at. It's going to take you time to get out of that. So it's not going to happen overnight, but it can be done.
So, can you give our audience a preview of those 7 steps, not just the titles, but the feeling of each one? What does each step ask of a
Well, the
person?
the, the main step is your self-image. That's the first one. The first step is the self-image. Your self-image controls every aspect of your life, whatever it is that you're doing. If you have a negative self-image, then of course you're going to do negative things. You're going to talk negative. You're going to self-talk is going to be negative. If someone asks you about something, you're going to have a negative response. We all deal with that every day. We got some people that have that negative energy when they come around you, and you try to avoid them because they have a negative mindset. So they negative self-image. So we spend about almost 2 months with our clients just improving their self-image. Once you improve your self-image and you improve your confidence, you can improve your self-esteem, you improve your overall self-image. And I mean, I'm talking about the image you look in the mirror. I'm talking about the image that's in your mind. How do you feel about yourself? How do you think about yourself? Do you have some goals you want to achieve? Do you feel like you can achieve those goals? If you feel like you cannot achieve those goals, then it's not going to happen. So your self-image has to be in line with the goals that you want to achieve. So we help you to build up that self-image, a positive self-image, a confident self-image. And you standing there now, which your chin up high, your chest out, and you have confidence that you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. And once you do that, then we go into step 2. And step 2 is attraction. And the reason why that's so important, because now you have the self-confidence and the positive energy. You're going to start to attract the resources and the people into your life so you can achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And that's step 2. And then from there, we go into accountability and responsibility, which is a tough step because most people do not want to take self-accountability for their situation. That's a big step. So we spend a lot of time on that step 2, helping our clients to understand that whatever the situation they're in is their responsibility, not someone else, not your spouse, not the government, not your job, not your boss, because they didn't want to give you a raise or whatever the situation might be. Is your responsibility. It's called self-accountability and responsibility. And then from there, we go to some of the other steps, which is repetition. And then the one step is focus, and then belief. And that continues into the 7-step system. And eventually, once they go through the 7-step process, which takes roughly, it takes about 4 months to go through the entire process. Once you go through that process, you're able to achieve the goals that you want. You're able to develop the lifestyle that you want and manifest it into reality, because now you have the confidence and the ability, and you change your daily habits. That's going to make you achieve the goals that you want. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, to make it real simple, is that if a person is trying to say lose weight, right? That's the easiest way to explain it. If a person is trying to lose weight, we look at their 24-hour schedule. We look at what they're doing 24 hours a day, what type of eating habits they have, and we analyze that and we compare it to the goal that they want to achieve, which is lose weight. If their daily habits and routines are not in sync with their goals, then we help them change their daily habits and routines and their eating habits so they be in sync with their goals. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's how we do it. Now, the problem that most people have is that the solution to most problems are simple. It's not the solution that's the problem. It's the execution of the solution. And that's where our training comes in, the subconscious mind, because how it works is that your mind is going to run off a program, and your daily habits are running off that program. So whatever you did for the last year or two, you're going to continue to do it because you can't change it because you don't know how the subconscious mind works. So the goal is for us to come in and rechange your habits and work with you for 65, 66 days. That's the time it takes for an adult to change a habit. About 65, 66 days to change a habit. So once you change that habit and it goes into the subconscious mind, now it runs automatically. So that new habit we implement into your schedule after about that 65th day is going to run automatically. You're going to do it without even thinking about it. But that new habit is going to bring you closer to your goals and not away from your goals. And that's a major part of our program. If all that makes sense, I'm trying to give you so much in a short period of time, but that's basically how it works.
So, which of these steps was hardest for you and why?
Well, the hardest one is really the first one, which is self-image. That's the reason why we spend so much time on self-image, because most people do have a negative self-image about themselves, and that's all through childhood. And the reason why, because before you're 12 years old, you're going to hear the word no to something that you want almost 700,000 times compared to the word yes, maybe 30,000 times. So in your mind, you're thinking no, no, no. That's a negative. So your self-image is going to be no. Your self-image is going to be negative. So we spend a lot of time on that. The other step is the accountability and responsibility. And a lot of people don't like to admit it, and they don't want to, but whatever situation you're in is because of your doing, not someone else's doing. And once you're able to understand that is up to you as an individual to get you out of the situation, that whatever the situation might be in is up to you. Once you understand that, then it makes it a lot easier for you to achieve your goals and change your life. Those are the two major steps that really, really, really makes a difference in our program in a person's life. So it's your self-image and accountability, self-accountability and responsibility are the major two ones.
So, what was the first sign, the first tangible proof that the comeback was actually happening?
I think it probably was back in 2014 when I restarted everything and restarted my security business, and things have started to turn around, and it came back, and I think that's when it really was. Yeah, back in 2014.
How did you ensure that your rebuild was fundamentally different from the version of yourself that failed?
Just by being self-aware or more self-conscious of what I was doing. Back then, just running off of instincts and just energy and talent. But now it's more of being self-aware of what I'm doing, and I think that makes the difference. And most people are not really self-aware of what they're doing. They're just doing it because they're running off a program. I hate to use the word program, but basically that's what it is. But once you become self-aware of your habits, your thinking, that makes all the difference. Make all the difference. It's almost like having two minds in one. You're thinking something negative, and you're aware you're thinking something negative. Most people might be thinking something negative, but they're not aware of it, because they just do it so regularly. It seems to be natural. but you have to be aware when you're thinking something negative or something bad. And once you become aware of it, you can easily change that thought and make it a positive thought. Remember, negatives will attract negatives, positive will attract positive. So try to think positive as much as you possibly can.
Final question for you. I want to make sure make sure that I'm not using too much of your time.
It's
But
okay.
make this the final question. You've now helped thousands of people through their own valleys. When you see someone going through what you went through, what's the first thing you want them to know?
I typically tell them that it's not a journey that you're going to take by yourself, and there's other people been on that journey. So the road has been smoothed out somewhat. It's going to be a tough road. It's not like you're going to have to chop down through the jungle, but it's still going to be a bumpy road. But it's not going to be as hard as you think because you're going to have help and assistance along the way. And that's what I like to let someone know, that they're going to have some help along the way. We're gonna not really hold their hand, but we're going to guide them along the way to make it a lot more to deal with a lot easier than say someone that's going down a road for the first time that no one has ever traveled before. So we try to make it as easy as possible for them. We have all the tools and the knowledge to help them down that journey. So that's the key. That's the key.
Do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience, and tell them how they can connect with you via social media, your websites, Zeb University, all those good things?
Yeah, they can reach us at zev.com. I'm sorry, zevtraining.com. You can go to zevuniversity.com, but mostly zevtraining.com. I'm on social media, Carl W. Zev, that's ZEV. Or you can call us in the office toll free at 1-888-226-5051, extension 701. That's toll free anywhere in the United States at 1-888-226-5051, extension 701. Or look us up on the web at zevtraining.com, or just go to Google and just Google in Zev University, ZEV University, and our information will come up. Words of wisdom will be, I think that if people really take the time and just think for a moment and just really slow down, I think we live too fast. There's so much going on throughout the day. We're all over the place, and it's unfortunately it's designed that way to keep you off track, to keep you off your game. But if you just take 5-10 minutes a day, sit somewhere quiet, meditate, just relax, take some deep breaths in, you'd be surprised what that will do for you when you start to make your decisions and go throughout the rest of your day. You start finding yourself doing things the way they should be done, or going down the right path you should be. But the most important thing is just to get an understanding of who you are, your daily habits, and see if your habits are taking you closer to your goals or away from your goals. If they're bringing you away from your goals, then you want to reach out to a firm like ours, and we can help you reach your goals. I mean, the great thing about it is that we're here in America. This is a great country. It has its issues, but let me tell you something, man. There's no other place I'd rather be. What else can a brother from the hood, go to the boardrooms of some of the biggest companies in the world without, and then, lose it all and then get it all back. So I wouldn't rather want to be any place else, but it's tough sometimes. But we have to just keep the fight going, keep pushing and keep grinding, keep moving forward. That's the words I like to give as wisdom to the audience.
So I'm gonna close with a monologue. So after I close the show, do you have a couple of minutes to chat afterwards?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank each and every individual that has been with us for this entire show, and I hope that you guys have learned a lot of words of wisdom and encouragement, and learned some wherewithal and persistence, as Carl has told us about the things that, and the tools and the abilities that he used in order to make himself the empire that he has built. Because I think it's one for each and every last one of us to learn from, especially entrepreneurship. I also want to say, for each of you that are watching on any of our channels, especially the YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would ask if you would please support us by subscribing and enabling all notifications to each and every channel, so that you are able to not only receive the notifications to watch the shows live, but you're also able to go back and watch each and every recording that we have recorded and learn the words of wisdom and encouragement from each and every professional that's been here, that's helped us with this experience to build our communities and also to make them better as we grow. So in closing, Carl, brother, I want to thank you.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
And thank you for trusting us with your story. Thank you for not cleaning it up, for not giving us the highlighted reel without the behind the scenes, for being willing to sit in the pain of those airport nights and car sleeping mornings so that someone listening right now could find permission to tell the truth about where they are. That kind of courage is rare, and this community, our community, does not take it for granted. Tonight we heard a masterclass. We heard that $500 and the right mindset can build a multi-million-dollar empire. We heard that the fall is not the end of the story. It is often the most important chapter. We heard that your subconscious mind is either working for you or against you right now. And that the difference between where you are and where you want to be is mostly a decision made in the space between your ears. We heard that depression does not discriminate and that asking for help is not weakness, it is wisdom. If you are listening to this and you need what Carl has, the 7 steps, the focused mind, the fire of Zev University, do not wait. Go find him. The links are in the description. The information is in the show notes. Your life is not going to transform itself, but with the right guide, it absolutely can transform. Carl is that God, is that guide. Now, to my AMIBW family, if this episode moved you, I need you to do your part. Share this episode, rate this show, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe on every platform you use. Season 4 is just getting started, and we are not slowing down. Every episode we bring you someone who has been through the fire and come out with the testimony. Tell your friends, tell your family. AMIBW is not just a podcast. It is a movement, and you are part of it. I'm your host, Charles Zachary King. This is AMIBW, and Am I My Brother's Warden? Season 4, episode 126. We will see you next time. God bless you, and God bless this community. You all have a great evening. And